So when we heard that the artist got like this 3% number, did they sign something that gave them the piece of the company? And that's what he's explaining. He's saying that's not exactly true. Billboard ran the story.
Booming, 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 what up? Booming, booming, hey, booming, what up? Booming, 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 what up? Booming, booming.
What it do, what it does, so you ain't never gotta guess what it was. I'm your host, Same Be Bowman, and we back at it again for another episode of Hip Hop C4. Yeah, now guys, today's subject, we're gonna talk about Jay-Z Tidal deal gets exposed, or better yet, discovered, because the details were never brought to light favorably or in detail as they should. Now, one man just went viral for it, and his name is Eric Jackson, and he goes in depth into the details of what that deal really consisted of, and did all 16 artists really get a piece of Tidal when he sold off Tidal. Now, we already know that Jay-Z has done shady dealings with his business in the past, and time after time after time and again, people are shields for Jay-Z and try and go for Jay-Z and back him and say, hey, well, you should support the black businessman. But is he really doing good business? We're going to go ahead and listen to Eric Jackson, courtesy of DJ Akademiks stream, and we're going to hear his thoughts with a little commentary of DJ Akademiks, and let's get to the bottom of this. Afterwards, let's wrap it up and talk about it and get our thoughts on it. Let's go.
I went a little bit viral yesterday, and he spoke about how Tidal was pretty much a finesse. And I'm giving you the summary of the whole thing, but you have to hear the whole story. Now, let me remind you of how the story went. Jay-Z bought Tidal, $56 million. He supposedly gave every artist that came on stage with him, about 12 of them, about 3% of the company. The company then got sold to, or not sold, they got invested in by Sprint for $200 million. The company was valued at $600 million, which would mean a 10x increase from what Jay-Z had bought it from, which was $56 million. Now, it later got sold for like $300 million. So really, you know, it wasn't $600 million. The real valuation was half. It got sold for $300 million to Jack Dorsey, as I said, and Square. And Square, that's now Block. And he took the board seat. But people have been always wondering, because we see people who have fell out with Jay or called Jay out, whether it was Kanye West or we even see Nicki Minaj. They've kind of, no one's ever said, oh yeah, we got whatever we were promised with this Square or with this Tidal deal, right? When I usually bring it up and I said Jay-Z said that people should stop watching or stop listening to music on Apple and also Spotify, they should listen to on Tidal. He did the whole B-side performances, basically said, y'all like supporting the white man, support me. I'm the black man who's getting to the streaming space. The idea was that Tidal was for the artist, by the artist, and if you cared about the artist and art, and black art, you would support Tidal. Now, subsequently, he sold it as soon as he could. When I've criticized that move, saying, hey, that's kind of snakish because you got everyone to buy in, saying that this is going to be for us, right? This is some black people shit. And then you sold it as soon as you got a chance to be on a white company's board of directors. You know what people said? And even Charlamagne even said it during our conversation. He said, well, why do people get companies? They get them to sell them. And, you know, once again, they move the goalposts. They just flip the script. You know, Jay-Z gets to sucker everyone in with the this is for us, and then basically sells it straight on some capitalist shit, and people just praise him because he's a billionaire. Anyway, I guess the bigger story here is, well, what is the details of the sale and who did it benefit, right? Because on paper and on face value, you would think everybody who was on that stage really profited from it. But Nicki Minaj has said otherwise, and Kanye, I haven't heard him say too much about it, but we've had no one really testify to say, oh no, like Jay really got us a bag. So here's the breakdown right now, and we're going to play my man Eric Jackson. You guys can follow him on Twitter and also on YouTube. He does a really phenomenal job every day of breaking down a lot of financial filings that have to do with record labels or even these things, which is DSP. And he not only covers hip-hop, but, you know, he has a incentive to cover hip hop because we have used him before. Here we go.
Everyone remembers the headline. Jack Dorsey bought Jay-Z's Tidal for $297 million. Beyonce, Rihanna, Kanye, Nicki, all co-owners, all getting paid. And here's what the SEC filing says the buyer actually paid: $233 million for 86.8% of the company, which means the whole thing, the platform 16 superstars stood on stage to launch, was actually worth $269 million that day, which was less than half of what it was worth 4 years before. Nicki Minaj says she was offered $1 million to go away. Steve Stout said she left millions on the table because she never signed her paperwork. And for 10 years, everyone has been arguing about who got scammed and who's been doing it without, they've been doing this without opening one set of documents that would show the actual results, the filings. So this story is actually stranger than anything you've already heard about it. And I went and read the filings. This is day 341. There were 3 SEC filings, 1 federal court motion, and the principal's own posts. And everything that I'm about to talk about on this video is all public record knowledge. March 30th, 2015, the famous stage, there were 16 artists standing shoulder to shoulder as owners. Beyonce, Rihanna, Kanye, Madonna, Nicki, J. Cole, Jack White, Daft Punk, the list goes on. The reporting that week, and it traces back to one Billboard story, said that each act was gifted about 3% of Tidal in exchange for pledging exclusive content. Now look at the sourcing there. One outlet, launch week, unnamed sources, no principal, no document has ever confirmed that there was 3% given to the artists. The thing that they signed on stage, which has been published.
Okay, this is very important, and we got to slow it down because this is where, headlines try to tell the story, but the paperwork say differently. So when we heard that the artist got like this 3% number, did they sign something that gave them the piece of the company? And that's what he's explaining. He's saying that's not exactly true. Billboard ran the story.
About 3% of Tidal in exchange for pledging exclusive content. Now look at the sourcing there. One outlet, launch week, unnamed sources, no principal, no document has ever confirmed that there was 3% given to the artists. The thing that they signed on stage, which has been published, is a declaration. And I've read it. It's a manifesto, not an equity contract. Whatever equity paper existed behind it has never been public. So there were 10 years of arguments, and the foundational document of the argument has never been seen. Then in 2017, January of 2017, Sprint bought 33% of Tidal for $200 million. That's a real reported transaction, and it did 2 things. It priced the whole company around $600 million, which was the high watermark for it, and it diluted everybody. So if you had a 3% stake, if it existed as reported, it became roughly 2% after that investment. No.
Pause. So they signed the blank piece of paper, which was a declaration, and then it was actually reported that the company sold, which was a real transaction. So the 16 artists that was lined up was just for show. The paper that they signed that was a declaration was just for show. It wasn't an official document, but the real sale was actually published. No details. Let's keep going.
Nobody renegotiated the legend, though. The legend stayed that, quote, the artists own 3%. Now the part that you came for, in March of 2021, Square, which is Jack Dorsey's company, it's now called Block, it announced it was buying the majority of Tidal, and the press release said for $297 million. Every headline said that. Some said $302 million. And then a year later, Block filed its annual report with the SEC, which is the 10K, and the accountants don't do vibes. The filed number was $233.2 million for 86.8% of the company. 223 million in cash, 10 million in stock. It implies the rough value for a Tidal was 269 million at the time, not 600 million. It quietly tells you that Tidal's value fell by more than half between 2017 and 2021. While the public story.
Okay. So once again, Tidal, while it was, I will call it innovative to some extent because it was helped defining what the streaming era was going to be. It wasn't a really profitable business, even though the value ballooned, but it ballooned because of different reasons. The market was expanded. So because you had an entity that was involved in streaming, it was worth more, but it wasn't making money.
Characterized it as a victory lap for Jay-Z. And one more thing that the filing says, and it kills a whole branch of the meme tree, the artists were not bought out. The press release says it plainly. All of Tidal's artist shareholders continue as co-owners, and the 10K carries them as minority interests, unnamed, aggregated, with exactly one artist who's named anywhere in the filings, Sean Carter, elected to Square's board in May of 2021. A seat on the board of a payments company worth tens of billions given to a man with no conventional payments background, no fintech background. So read that for what it is. Part of what the deal delivered was the Carter name. Everyone else is a line item called, quote, non-controlling interest.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure if you guys caught that. When they buy Tidal, they don't liquidate the artist, right? They didn't liquidate the artist, which means, so they said the artists continue on. So they diluted their interest in Tidal, but they didn't pay him out. The only person who gets some type of liquid, right, is the person who owned like 87% of it, which was Jay-Z, right? So Jay-Z gets paid, right? And he gets a board seat. But the actual artist, all they have is this, I won't call this fictitious, but this equity that they don't get paid out for. Only Jay gets paid. Everybody else continues to be the shareholders, right? Now, I know you're like, well, they could sell it any time. The story's not done.
Sitting behind an option, Block's option, not theirs, to be bought out at fair value someday. So read that structure for what it is. They can't force a sale. They can't force a price, and they just have to wait. So now you go back to that stage. The word that day that they talked about was ownership. Artists finally owning the thing that they built instead of renting it from labels. So put the two documents side by side, and what they announced in 2015 and what the filing says they got. 16 owners became one board member and 15 line items. I'm not going to tell you what anyone intended, but I am going to tell you that the ownership that they announced that day and the ownership the SEC filing describes are not the same kind of ownership. The revolution was real on the stage. It just wasn't in the actual paperwork that came later when the deal was done.
Okay. So according to SEC filings from this guy that he viewed, the ownership that these artists had weren't paperwork ownership that had to be either divulged or had to be accounted for when they filed these SEC files. When you sell a company or whatever, like it's going to happen, right? And also there was a publicly traded, remember, it gets absorbed by Square at the time. That's a publicly traded company. So everything is public. The filings doesn't show that these artists own shit except Jay-Z. This is a good finesse, huh?
And we gonna go on here, stop it right there. That's crazy work. So Jay-Z sold the company, took all the money, and he took their part and kept it with the company, saying, "Oh, those are minority shares." So them people who were sitting on that stage, all 16 of them, right? Sorry, 15 and 1. All 15 didn't get nothing from it. They sold them a dream. They basically got sold off and what was it? Wrote on a blank piece of paper. They wrote on a piece of paper. So it wasted their time. They had to give content. They got imaginary shares that they never could cash out or liquidate. And he got a board seat in all the millions. What a facade. Jay-Z, you are quite the businessman. Guys, get down in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on this situation. Is Jay-Z continuing to show that he's not a good person to do business with? Should the people continue to back him? Because all of his business deals always come to the forefront, and they never have the best interests of people in mind. They only have Sean Carter's interests in mind or his family's. Let me know what you think about this situation. And also, if you like content like this, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell because it pushes your boy into the algorithm. I'm your host, Saint B. Bowman. I'm gone. Peace.